Number 10's Deviant Scheme. In February 2017, a server in southern Tampa was arrested after planning to attack a customer. Alexandra Soletos, who worked at the Drink nightclub, had only been working there for 4 months when she decided it was time to let loose and go harm a customer. Now, no one knows whether she had a personal vendetta or just wanted to watch a guy get beat up. What we do know is that she drew up an elaborate scheme to make it look like she wasn't involved. How, you might ask? Well, first she set up everything next to the nightclub by hiring 2 burly dudes who'd beat up the customer, making it look like your average bar fight. But on top of this, she claimed her car had been stolen, when in reality she'd actually given it to the suspects. So when the beating started, she actually acted like she was trying to stop it, and honestly, if it weren't for the detectives calling her bluff, she could have won an Oscar. Her scheme didn't exactly pan out the way she'd hoped, though, since she was charged for being the mastermind. Oh, and her job at the nightclub? Yep, that's gone too. The 2 men she hired for the job and her true motivations continue to elude authorities to this day. Number 9, Justice Served. It's always frustrating when you hear about someone getting harassed at their workplace, but in 2018, a Georgia waitress took matters into her own hands and taught her harasser a lesson. 21-year-old Amelia Holden was working at Vinnie Van Gog's in Savannah at the time and was just going about her day serving drinks and food to customers. As she stopped to do some stuff at the counter, though, a customer walking past decided it would be a good idea to grope her. Now, unfortunately, this happens a lot in bars, and for some reason, it usually doesn't get a reaction from people. Having said that, Amelia wasn't just going to let this dude do that to her and get away with it, so she grabbed him by the shirt and roughly threw him up against the wall in pure kung fu fashion. Once he was down, she yelled at him and tore a strip off his shirt. Oh, and as great as this was, the night got even better when police were called to the scene to arrest the offender. In fact, he spent 2 nights behind bars, a punishment which he himself admitted was well deserved. The closed-circuit television footage of the incident went viral on social media, with people applauding Amelia for standing up for women and being an absolute hero. So, kudos to her. Number 8, the Tip Manipulator. In May 2015, a Florida waitress was charged with grand theft for tampering with tips and giving herself a bigger payout. 21-year-old Victoria Lynn Bachman worked at the Ozona Blue restaurant in Palm Harbor and apparently got tired of customers not tipping enough. But instead of trying to improve her service or just demanding a better wage, she came up with a sneaky little plan where she could go swipe some extra cash without anyone noticing. Her strategy was to take the bill from the customer and enter a slightly higher amount for the tip in the computers. So if you wrote $5 as your tip, she'd actually take out 6. And honestly, it worked for a while too, because most of the people didn't really notice such a trivial change in their charge. As a matter of fact, her scheme was so successful that she managed to squeeze an extra $1,000 out of customers on over 130 checks. It all seemed to be working out for her. But when the restaurant started to get charged back on some of the orders because, well, they were fraudulent, her plan quickly fell to pieces. They found out Victoria was the one behind the fake receipts, and they eventually fired her. That wasn't it, though. Only a month after getting kicked out of the restaurant, she was also arrested and charged with grand theft. Number 7, deadly allergies. In August 2016, a Quebec man was put into a coma after his server ignored his severe allergies. Simon Pierre Canuel was out to dinner at La Tapiquere when he ordered a fancy steak tartare, and since he had a life-threatening allergy to fish and shellfish, he made it a big point to tell his server while being seated, and again as he was ordering food. In fact, he even pointed out that despite him telling the server to let the kitchen staff know about his allergies, he wasn't actually writing down anything in the notepad. Now, the thing with expensive restaurants is that many have super moody lighting to elevate the atmosphere, so when the food came out, Simon couldn't really tell what sort of steak dish he was being served. As soon as he chomped down, though, he realized what had happened. Yup, he was served salmon tartare instead of beef. And he couldn't really do much about it, though, because, well, he left his epinephrine auto-injector in the car. As a result, he collapsed on the spot, suffered a cardiac arrest, and was rushed to a nearby hospital where he fell into a coma for multiple days. Having said that, the 22-year-old server was arrested and charged with criminal negligence. Plus, the restaurant was also promptly sued by the diner. Interestingly enough, this wasn't the first such case like this for them either, as they ignored another customer's nut allergy a few years before this incident, resulting in a $25,000 damage settlement. Have you ever had an allergic reaction to something? Tell us about it in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Free soda. In July 2018, a McDonald's customer's attempt at pouring soda into a free water cup turned into a massive fight. It all started when a Nevada woman thought she could sneak in some free soda, but as soon as the workers tried to stop her from doing so, she kind of freaked out, and from that point on, it was basically chaos. In her rage-induced frenzy, the customer splashed a full milkshake on the employee. And that's not all though, because when another server tried to intervene, the woman hit her with a metal tray. Now at this point, things had escalated to such an extent that there was really no going back. The two McDonald's employees ganged up on the customer, held her by her hair, and slammed her head onto the table. It was, without exaggeration, a backstage wrestling brawl. Funnily enough, as she was beating up the customer, the server kept saying, quote, "My mama ain't dead, you respect my mama," end quote, which probably means there was a yo mama insult thrown at some point during the argument. The customer, on the other hand, was up for the fight even after people got involved and separated them. To be fair though, she probably wanted revenge after getting absolutely obliterated, but then again, that's just wishful thinking. That being said, no charges were given to anyone and the incident was just labeled a mere scuffle. Number 5. Dine and Dash. In June 2021, a Dine and Dash attempt turned sour after a waitress tried to stop freeloaders from running away. It happened at a Nifty 50s restaurant in Washington where a group of customers tried to sneak out without paying their $70 bill. But before they could leave, a waitress spotted them and followed them to their car. As soon as she confronted them though, things got ugly because it was clear they weren't in the mood to pay. Instead, they forced her into their Dodge Durango and assaulted her before taking off down the road on Route 42. And while they did kick her out a short distance away on the side of the street, she was left bruised and completely traumatized. The poor waitress then walked all the way back to the Nifty 50s where she realized she was not only suffering from a concussion, but also severe abrasions on her face and neck. Of course, the police got involved, but despite catching the suspect's car and their faces on surveillance footage, they still haven't been able to track down the Dashers. In fact, all they could do was recommend other servers not chase customers into parking lots. Number 4. On the Edge. In July 2018, an Applebee's waitress had to get 15 stitches after she was attacked by 4 of her female customers. It all started when the women who'd been waiting a while for their food grew incredibly irritated at the establishment's management. Things quickly escalated though when the waitress accidentally brushed up against one of their legs that was stuck out in the aisle, but it really took off when the same thing happened while the server was putting their food and drinks on the table. And before she could walk away, they pulled her back onto the table and started beating her. In fact, not only did they punch her, but one of the women grabbed a steak knife and stabbed her in the forearm. Also, after they were done dishing out the punishment, they took off without paying their $60 bill. Oh, and just to add insult to injury, they also took the servers' tips with them. Now, while other diners stepped in to break up the fight, it didn't stop the women from getting away. The poor waitress, on the other hand, had to be taken to a nearby hospital to get 15 stitches, on top of all the other treatments she had to get for her abrasions. Thankfully, though, it was nothing too serious since she returned to work the next day. As for the suspects, they were eventually arrested and thrown behind bars. Number 3. Too slow. In June 2016, 3 women attacked a McDonald's worker just because she was too slow taking their order. Ashley England, Mary Jordan, and Sammy Whaley were getting their daily dose of McDonald's at one of its locations in Ohio, but it seemed like they were a bit too impatient that day. The trio pulled up in the parking lot and got their order taken by the server, and honestly, it seemed like a perfectly normal interaction. Little did the server know, though, that she was dealing with crazy people, and getting the order late by just a few minutes would result in her getting the beating of a lifetime. So when she didn't show up with the food after the given time, the women in the car got increasingly angry and lashed out at the server instead. They got out of the vehicle, grabbed the waitress, and started wailing on her, since, according to them, she was at fault for their late order, and once they were done, they simply drove off, leaving the poor injured worker behind. Oh, and it wasn't just them. Apparently, the women's children were involved in the attack as well. Thankfully, everything was caught on surveillance cameras, so it didn't take long for police to track down the suspects and arrest them. But they didn't show any guilt. Even in their mugshots, the trio was seen smiling and posing. Having said that, they were eventually charged on suspicion of assault and child endangerment, so they probably weren't happy after being put in prison. Number 2. Drunken Rage. In July 2022, a Welsh waitress drank a bottle of vodka and attacked a complete stranger who she thought was sleeping with her boyfriend. 40-year-old Donna Gunn was working as a waitress at a coffee shop, had a bunch of things going on in her life. For example, she was suspicious that her boyfriend was having an affair with one of her friends, and this led her down a path to alcohol addiction. One day, though, she decided she'd had enough and went out looking for revenge. Now, just to get that adrenaline going, she downed the vodka, but little did she know it'd make her completely black out. So instead of just confronting her boyfriend or friend, she saw a random stranger outside a Cardiff pub, called her over, and then started punching her in the face for no reason at all. In fact, she even threw her against a wall, leaving her with a split lip, bruises on her face, and swelling to her head. When Donna came out of her blackout, she found herself in a jail cell. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd been involved in an incident like this and had a history of assaulting people after drinking. This also led to her losing her job as a waitress. That being said, she avoided a jail sentence and was later sent to rehab instead. Number 1. Too many people. In April 2021, a group of customers assaulted a Chili's waitress after she told them they had to follow the restaurant's pandemic restrictions. Kelsey Wallace, who was a server at the Chili's location on Constitution Avenue, was caught by surprise when a group of 11 people walked into the restaurant during the height of the pandemic. She still offered them 2 sets of tables though, so they could sit while being socially distanced, but they insisted on sitting closer together within a single stall, which was something Kelsey just couldn't allow. Why? Well, because only 6 people could be seated at one table due to the restrictions. So after some back and forth and a bunch of hateful insults, things got pretty violent. As a matter of fact, one of the women from the group picked up the wet floor sign and hurled it at Kelsey, leaving her with a laceration above the eye. On top of that, 2 other women started wailing on her. According to them, though, it was an act done in self-defense. No one actually bought their story, thankfully, and one of them was charged with aggravated battery, while the rest got misdemeanor charges. Kelsey, on the other hand, had to be taken to the hospital where she received 5 stitches. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be a server at a fast food restaurant or a bartender at a bar? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.